Hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth installment of our 10-part deep dive into the Snyder Cut. Today we are going to be discussing life, anti-life, the power of friendship, and the rescue mission to save Cyborg's dad. Let's get into it. The first shot in this chapter is instantly iconic. You have Jim Gordon standing on top of a Gotham rooftop, with the bat signal lit and thunder streaking across the sky. This is as classic a Batman image as you can probably capture, and I remember when a still image of this moment was released as promotional material for Justice League, and how excited it made me when I first saw it. Rewatching the film today, I still get those same emotions of excitement every time I see it. Batman looms larger than life over us on top of an ominous Grim Reaper statue as the music swells. The vertical framing of this really accentuates how much Batman feels dominant and powerful and how much he truly does tower over us. I assume this is the rooftop of the Gotham City Police Department's building, since it has the bat signal on it, and there is a plaque that says to protect and serve, which is the motto of the GCPD. But the GCPD being represented by a hooded skeleton is a little bit of a strange choice. Gotham is a dark place and it has a kind of gothic feel, so this detail definitely adds to that atmosphere. In terms of production design, it gives it a feel and it's cool and epic. I just question the architects who put that on top of a police building. Batman jumps down onto the roof and is joined by the rest of the team, though we are reminded throughout their conversation that to truly stand a chance against Darkseid, they need their team to get bigger. They discuss the parademons, and we get a nice follow-up to the parademon sketch from earlier on in the film that we've been following, as Gordon now shares it with Batman. They both understand the obvious implication of who it looks like, Batman, but the team knows the real threat that the drawing is referring to, the parademons and Darkseid. Cyborg, having realized the danger his father is in, has come to join the mission as well. Up to this point in his character arc, he has resisted the call to adventure out of bitterness and resentment, self-loathing, internal depression, and inner turmoil. His internal conflict and struggle to forgive his father has manifested in his external conflicts with his dad. Even though he tried to hold on to that grudge, he clearly loves his dad, because his dad is what ultimately leads him to step up and be a hero and join the team. He loves his dad so much that he joins this team simply to rescue him. I love the smile Diana gives as she realizes that Victor came. She stepped out of her comfort zone and showed love to him. She sowed a seed that was valuable, that he could have a community and have a purpose. She shared her life story, her testimony with him, talked about Steve Trevor and her own struggles. And even though it took his dad's kidnapping for him to come, the seed of kindness and the meeting that she had with him is what led him to not just go charging in guns a-blazing to rescue his father alone, but to join with the League to go and fight that mission together. We should never forget how important and life-changing it is to sow those kinds of seeds in people. The smallest things, like showing genuine interest in people's lives, being there for them in their time of need, listening to them, encouraging them, and sharing our own testimonies with them, can lead to the most unexpected things. It could be the difference between them isolating or opening up, going in alone and facing the fear and the darkness by themselves, or finding real help in community. The difference between them ending their life or seeing a greater value in themselves. Authenticity breeds relationships that are real and honest, and those relationships are what truly bring healing. There's a saying that says you don't need to tell your secrets to everyone, but you should tell your secrets to someone. There needs to be some wise, loyal, loving person in your life that you trust enough to actually take the mask off and share with them what you're truly dealing with, so that they can truly pray for you, encourage you, speak truth into your situation that you can't tell yourself because of the darkness and the pain that you're feeling. Next, Cyborg uses his mathematical triangulation skills to pinpoint where all the parademon sightings converge, and Batman uses his observant detective know-how to put more of the pieces together. Alfred runs the show from the Batcave while our heroes make their way into Steppenwolf's villainous hideout. Diana makes a note that they should not engage alone, that they're going to do this together as a team. Once again, she is seen as a unifier. She understands that there is a strength in agreement and unity and them being a team and not lone wolves and lone guns. This scene also continues the movie's sense of style and how it highlights all of the unique attributes and powers of our very cool lead characters. There's a chasm that they all have to bridge. The Flash does it by zipping across, Batman uses his grappling hook, and Cyborg glides with his enhancements. It's cool to see the unique approach each character takes. The music here consists of drums and guitar licks that seem to allude to the special version of Come Together that has been tied to the film since the trailers in 2017, which is also pretty cool. Throughout this video series, I've loved pointing out all of the times where we feel like we're in an interconnected world, where the characters have heard of each other in ways that make sense. And we get one of those moments when Cyborg says that he questioned whether the Batman was even real up to this point. But he had heard of the Batman, because he grew up in Gotham. Next, we have a line that is super small, but very on the nose thematically. Steppenwolf is interrogating Howard the janitor, who is seen to be alive, and Howard says to stop torturing him because they have families. Steppenwolf's reply, I think, is very telling. He says, because the prisoners have families, they have weakness. To Steppenwolf, family is a vulnerability that he can exploit as an interrogator. But in all truthfulness, it is a statement steeped in his worldview. As we have been discussing, family and unity is the strength of the Justice League. They all fulfill a different role in this body, in this family. And it's the power of love that ultimately overcomes the darkness, light overcoming the dark. But to Steppenwolf, family is merely a weakness to exploit and nothing more. It is something lesser that makes you worse. He sees family as an obstacle to success, as opposed to family being a success, or maybe even what truly matters in of itself. The Flash, in his terror at Steppenwolf, wishes they had Superman with them. This will be foreshadowing and shares with us the idea of longing for Superman that's already inside all of these characters before they ever float the idea to bring him back to life. Diana gives the team some strategy of how they can proceed, and I like that moment a lot because she is level-headed and she's really acting as a leader in many ways throughout this section of the film. When Silas stands up for Howard and challenges Steppenwolf, Victor's instincts take over. I think Silas's willingness to stand up against Steppenwolf shows a courage and a bravery that is admirable. And when Victor sees his dad could be in danger, his whole cyborg body springs to action. His arm morphs into a gun, and his back morphs into an arm to grab the spider probe that would be attacking his dad. His whole being is malleable based on his feelings and emotions, and right now protecting his dad is his only priority, despite the fact that it ruined their element of surprise or whatever previous strategy Diana had come up with. Wonder Woman's musical theme cranks into gear as she goes up against Steppenwolf, who comments on her greater power level compared to the other Amazons he has taken down earlier in the film. He feels personally threatened by her and challenged by her to the point of desiring to fight one-on-one just to prove his superiority. This also foreshadows the final showdown in the film, in which Diana will be the one to lay the last blow. A whole lot of superhero action ensues, with distinct fighting styles for each of our team members. The Flash remembers Diana's comments and says, "Guys, this is not together!" With Cyborg rushing in, Diana fighting Steppenwolf, and the rest of them fighting in a jumble, they are hardly a unified front at this point, and they do suffer as a result of that. The Flash's speed truly feels mind-boggling, and his efforts to escort people out gives him a special job. He rescues them from falling debris and moves so fast that we can only see random static positions from his movements amidst the cacophony of blue lightning. Alfred is happy to see his gadget efforts are paying off, and he proceeds to send the Nightcrawler to the rescue. The Flash gets yet another time to shine, as he sprints around the tunnel and touches Diana's sword while everyone else seems frozen in time. As the prisoners are getting escorted outside, there's an important moment between Silas and Victor, where Silas says he wasn't sure if Victor would come, and Victor replies, "You're my father." This is his dad. Of course he loves his dad. It's interesting because a lot of times stories take the opposite approach, where For instance, in the Prodigal Son, we are all represented by the son who goes astray, and he returns home to the father, and the father welcomes him home with open arms. So we make mistakes, but when we come home and repent and come back to God, he welcomes us with open arms, regardless of what we did. And it's a beautiful story. But in our earthly lives, we don't always live up to the standards set by the father in the Prodigal Son, which is representative of God. We are not always perfect parents, and Victor is not a perfect child either. There's messiness and brokenness on both sides of the equation. We have the posture of Cyborg, who is looking at a flawed father who did not always do the right thing and was not always there for them when he needed. But he's able to let go of all of the things that he had held against him. And he's able to look at his father and say, "You're my dad," and to restore that family bond and that intimacy that they have, or at least attempt the process of beginning to heal that wound. This is really important for Cyborg because that unforgiveness was actually eating him from the inside out. One of the main reasons we forgive people is because that God first forgave us when we didn't deserve it, so we should forgive others when they don't deserve it. However, we also have internal things that we benefit from when we let go of the darkness that is bitterness and unforgiveness. One illustration I've heard of unforgiveness is that it's the equivalent of lighting ourselves on fire and hoping the other person dies of smoke inhalation. We are crushing and tormenting our souls by holding on to things that are not good and not healthy, and instead of showing them love and showing them the forgiveness that was shown to us by God, praying for our enemies, loving them the way we are called to do, because God equips us to do that through the transformation that happens on the inside of us. Instead, we can try to hold on to our hate. And when you hold on to hate, it's like Star Wars. It turns to darkness. It turns to evil. So Cyborg is becoming more of a hero by forgiving his father. And even though there's not a moment where he says, "I forgive you," I think that this moment of understanding between them is the beginning of him forgiving and letting go. And when that happens, then you have the possibility of moving into reconciliation. And reconciliation is always a beautiful thing. Ultimately, this fight is a successful rescue mission, but not a final victory against their enemy. The Flash gets shot, Victor's epic takeover of the Nightcrawler can't overpower Steppenwolf, and our villain does escape. Steppenwolf floods the tunnel, and Aquaman comes to the rescue, so now our team is almost complete. Aquaman is stemming the tide of this giant flood with his trident, and it looks awesome. Very similar to an earlier scene with Aquaman, this image of flowing water piled high in the air once again brings to mind the parting of the Red Sea in Exodus, as God is allowing Israel to cross out of slavery in Egypt and into the promise of a new home. Or later on, when God parts the Jordan River for Israel to make yet another crossing into their promised land. Aquaman's arrival heralds yet another example of how seeds have a delayed response. Bruce had no clue that Arthur would come to their rescue in their time of need. By all measures, his meeting with Arthur seemed to end in failure. But people take time. Things grow slowly. Arthur had to come to the realization of his calling in his own time. But the influence of people like Bruce and Volko and Mira contributed to his willingness to finally go. In the end, even Aquaman can't fully stem the tide, though. Our heroes cling to the Nightcrawler and they escape the rising floodwaters. Next, Steppenwolf makes a realization that changes the stakes a bit. He begins to feel drawn to the mother boxes, which are now very pretty and multicolored, and he is given a dark vision where he claws the Earth, just like Darkseid did in the war all those years ago. He sees the battlefield where Earth defeated Darkseid, and as he slams his axe into the Earth, just like Darkseid did, the same writing is carved onto the Earth's surface, and it reveals that Earth is the home of the anti-life equation. In the comics, the anti-life equation is what could allow Darkseid to subjugate every living creature to his will by eliminating free will entirely. Everyone would become a slave to Darkseid, In this film, what the anti-life equation is a mystery that Darkseid's trying to discover. But in the comics, there is a literal formula that we know, and that formula is loneliness plus alienation plus fear plus despair plus self-worth, divided by mockery, divided by condemnation, divided by misunderstanding, times guilt, times shame, times failure, times judgment. N equals Y, where Y equals hope and N equals folly. So hope equals folly in this equation. Love equals lies, life equals death, and self equals Darkseid. So in the anti-life equation, hope is not real. Hope is foolishness. There is no light. There is no way out. Love is not real. It is a lie that gets your hope up, and hope is folly. Life equals death. There is no true life. I think this list should speak to us. Loneliness, alienation, despair, condemnation, guilt, shame, judgment. These are all gateways to darkness and emptiness. They keep us in a dark pit without a hope or a light. This equation keeps people in slavery to Darkseid. These things in our lives, they keep us a slave to our feelings, to our evil desires, to our brokenness, to our sin, and our insecurities and the evil wishes of others. And there is no life in that. And if this is anti-life that makes us so broken and unable to go on that we become slaves to darkness, it begs the question, what is true life? The comics have a life equation as well, but I want to ask the question more in the context of our actual lives. In John 14, Jesus comforts his disciples and says that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and the only way to God the Father. So what that means is Jesus, the one who came to bring life and life abundantly, offers the solution to these concepts of anti-life. Where there was judgment, he offers forgiveness, having taken the punishment for those sins on his own shoulders when he died on the cross. He removes the guilt by making us clean and new. He offers love that is not based in lies or manipulation, because it can't be based in lies, because he himself is truth. Our very definition of love comes from first being created and loved by him. Instead of loneliness, he is the great comforter. Instead of low self-worth, he says you are made in the image of God, designed specially in the womb with a purpose, that you're set in this specific time, this specific place for a reason that will bring him glory. He sets the lonely in families. He frees us from slavery and the subjugation of deceivers like Darkseid, like Satan, and offers us the opportunity to die to the anti-life and to take up a new, eternal, refreshed life of peace and joy. And that is definitely a rant that clearly goes beyond the scope of the movie. But I couldn't help but speak on what I see to be such a powerful contrast between light and dark and goodness and evil. Anti-life is such an explicit title. It's like the dark side of the Force in Star Wars. We're talking about the most fundamental definitions of good and evil. And speaking of that evil, for the first time, we see Darkseid finally arrive. First, we saw him as a statue underground, and now we see him through the volcanic mirror that we saw Desaad in earlier. The parademons bow, and Steppenwolf himself removes his helmet out of respect and bows in awe and fear. Out of respect, his whole upper body armor really retracts, and he refers to Darkseid as the Great One, and that he is nothing but Darkseid's humble servant. We have to be careful what we decide to be a servant to. Are we a servant to serve and love others? Are we a servant to righteousness, to God? Or are we a humble servant to evil, to selfish gain? Poor Steppenwolf is working so hard, and he's working for the wrong master. But he is told that having found the anti-life equation, if he unites the boxes, that his master will come to Earth and that his redemption will be at hand, or could be at hand. He's totally at Darkseid's mercy. And Darkseid revels in the thought of the whole universe being at his beck and call, stripping the world of free will with the anti-life equation. Steppenwolf continues to cling to the hope of Darkseid's favor coming to him. Back with our heroes, Cyborg sees how to fix Batman's troop carrier. Once again, we're better together. In the conversation that ensues, Superman is once again casually mentioned as one of the only beings they've seen with that level of power. The desire to have him back is building up in their anticipation of the threat that they face. As the conversation continues, accusations begin to be thrown. Arthur is distrustful of Victor, and the group is skeptical of Victor due to his knowledge of the boxes. He reveals the history of the box in a way that is, quite frankly, awesome. Back in the mental scape, he walks in his Gotham jacket through Nazi streets and through the lifetime of the mother box, up to the point where Silas opens it and uses it to revive Victor. We see the latter half of Victor's origin that was skipped over earlier. And this is a powerful place to have it. This pivotal piece of his story, which Victor had formerly not been able to emotionally cope with, he is now sharing with others. Our current Victor looks at his past with pain in his eyes, watching the turning point of his life. He watches the agony that he's experienced. And as he finishes telling the story, his expression speaks volumes. His jaw is clenched, his eyes are daggers, and his whole demeanor is tense and on edge. It is clear he is growing. He rescued his father, he's opening up to others about his story, and he is able to bring others to that moment and confront it. Earlier on in the film, I do not think he would be showing the moment the cyborg was born to others. It would be too private, too personal, too much pain. So the fact that he's doing this is big. But he's still clearly holding on to a lot of the pain from that experience. Still, those wounds are fresh, and the frustration he has with Silas's actions, the feeling that he's been turned into something horrific, those things are still lingering. Victor goes on to explain that the mother boxes are not weapons, they're change engines. They change matter into a different form. So it's not about giving life or taking life, merely transforming a form at the will of its master. The Man of Steel theme begins to build as our heroes contemplate what has been on their minds for quite some time. What if Superman could really return? In epic fashion, instead of saying it, Cyborg gives voice to their thought by projecting an image of Superman in all of his glory. With the return of Superman's theme and iconography, it only makes sense to transition back to Lois, who is now talking to Martha Kent. They have a heartfelt conversation about Lois's struggle to move on, how she hasn't been able to go back to work since Clark died. Martha and Lois both nearly break down in tears over their grief at how the world mourned a symbol when they mourned a family. He wasn't Superman to them. That was going to be Lois's husband. She loves him more than anyone she has ever loved. Despite Clark being dead and Lois being alive, Lois is the one who needs to decide to live again and move on, to take part in the world again, to allow herself to be open to people again. The shocker, and the thing I'm still not really sure how to feel about, is the reveal that happens right after this. Martha is Martian Manhunter, and Martian Manhunter is the General from Man of Steel and BVS. It is certainly a twist. It is a twist on twist. It is hard to read how heartfelt and genuine the conversation is, though, on the rewatch, with the knowledge that it is not coming from Martha Kent. However, I do love seeing the Manhunter be brought to life, and the twist that he has been among them the whole time is certainly interesting. Listening to Martha's words now from the perspective of Martian Manhunter, about how she knows what it's like to live with a secret, certainly takes on a new meaning. On screen, General Swanwick mainly dealt with Superman, not Clark, so he wouldn't relate to the same feelings as Lois. But he has been living a double life of his own, so he certainly relates to that. And since he knows the truth about Clark, he probably watched how Clark lived his life outside of being Superman, in moments that we were not privy to in the films. I have many questions about what this reveal implies, but overall, it shows that the League is still growing and that Manhunter genuinely cares about Lois, as we saw their friendship in BVS as well. He was a friend to Lois in the other films and coming in the form of Martha to talk about what he shouldn't be able to know as General Swanwick, was to help Lois the best he could. He's been watching her struggle through this process, and this is his way of reaching out and trying to get her to open up again. Once again, we need good friends in our life that are willing to do this, but hopefully not by impersonating someone else, because that's a little shady. Back in our hero huddle, Cyborg offers hesitation about the ramifications of the decision to possibly bring back Superman with the box. Arthur questions whether it's even possible, let alone harmful. Diana is contemplative, and we can see through her body language that she's uncomfortable as she kind of shifts around. Barry, who has spoken of Superman the whole film, sees no other option but to at least try. Diana acknowledges the real stakes. Bringing him back could result in the destruction of the whole world. It could alert the enemy as they activate the box, and all could be lost. They realize that none of the boxes called out until Superman died. The Superman makes the enemy scared. If we are to make comparisons to Christ, he is the light that makes the demons tremble. But Bruce sees no other option but to bring Superman back. And that is where we leave off for part 4. Be sure to join us as we continue in part 5. Like and subscribe for more content just like this, and I will see you guys next time.